All right, we're going to do a measuring lesson. If you've never measured before, if you don't know how to read a tape measure, we're going to teach you how to do that. The other thing, in measuring, obviously you are either in core, carpentry 1, carpentry 2, something, you're going to have to learn how to read a tape measure. And it's just a good general life skill. Every time I go to sites or somewhere like that, a hardware store, I talk to a contractor, one of the first things that they make sure to tell me is to teach you guys how to measure. They want people that know how to read a tape measure. So if you know the metric system is based on units of 10, everything. So if you've got 10 millimeters, make a centimeter, 100 centimeters, 100 centimeters make a meter, 1,000 millimeters make a, so it's just all units of 10. If you do, 10 millimeters times 10 times 10 gives you that 100, and then, if you do that times 10, you get 1,000. What we're going to do is teach you how to read the standard US tape measure. All right, we have what we call the standard system. This is just a blank presentation we're going to go through. I'm going to show you how to read, and I'm going to write. Now, if you can visualize this, this is 0. This is the start of your tape measure, and this is 1 inch. Now, I've obviously expanded 1 inch to make it larger than the typical 1 inch like this. That way you can see it. So all we've done is blown it up. So we have 0 here. We've got 1 inch all the way down here. The first thing, this one's fairly easy. Everybody knows where this one's at. All right, is the half mark. Half is right between 0 and 1. Everybody intuitively knows what half is. If you ask somebody to cut something in half, or find half, or give you half, everybody intuitively knows what half is. So half is fairly easy to find most of the time for people. They intuitively understand this. All right? The next one that we're going to break it down into is quarters. There's your half line. There is your first quarter. All right? Now, if you think of a football game, we've got it into quarters. Quarters is 4. Quarter means 4. There's 4 quarters in a football game. So we're at 0. We get to the end of our first quarter. We're here. All right, and then we go to our second quarter. Now, the problem it's not really a problem, but just as a matter of explaining, is we go to our second quarter. If we've got a second quarter, we've got our first quarter, second quarter. However, in America, if we've got a fraction that is like this, 2 over 4, we call it by whatever its most reduced name is. So if you can reduce 2 over 4 down, 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 4 2 times. So we're going to end up calling it 1/2. So we got 1 quarter, 2 quarters, which is a half. The next one that we've got is 3 quarters. All right. And I'm going to write that in black, 3 over 4. That was fairly easy. So we got 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters. All the way down here we got 4 quarters. All right. We can call that 4 over 4. 4 quarters. Now, if you divide 4 into 4, or any number over itself is 1. You probably learned that in either math class, something, somewhere along the line, you've learned what your quarters are, right? The next thing that we're going to break it down, we're going to break, and if you'll notice as we do this, the lines, all we do is keep splitting the distance between here and here in half. So we're going to split a quarter in half, and if we do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times, we're going to end up with 8 sections. So we're going to call that 8s. And the reason that we call this quarters is if you count the spaces in between the lines, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces in between your lines. So we're at quarters, now we're going to go to 8s. All right, there's your quarters again. There are your 8s. Your 8s are going to be in red on this. All right, that is 1/8. Your next one is going to be 2/8. Now, 2/8 is already on here. 1/8 is there, and you can see that that is the same amount of distance from here to here. So you got 1/8, take that same distance, there. So 1/8 is 2/8, just like I explained on the last one. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 4, or 8 4 times, and you come up with 1/4. Our next one is going to be 3/8, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. The next one is going to be 4/8, which is 1/2, 4/8. Now, and if you'll notice, all of these fractions still come out to be 1/2. 4/8 is half of 8. 2/4 is half of 4. 1/2 is half of 2. All right, so all of these equal up to be the exact same thing. Our next 8 is 5/8. All right, our next 8 is going to be 6/8, which is the same thing as 3/4. And our last 8 that people actually recognize is your 7/8. All right, and you can also call 1 down here the same thing as 4/4, but if you're in eighths, it's 8/8. Any number over itself turns into a 1. Last but not least, we're going to break. Now, if you break 8s down, if you'll notice that once we broke it down from half, we went to quarters. Well, 4 is double 2. And then we broke it down into 8s. 8 is double 4. So if we keep along that same pattern, obviously we should be, if you double 8, you should get to 16ths. I'm going to bring all the 16ths. 16ths are going to be in yellow. All right. Now, one thing before I get to the 16ths, if you'll notice your 8s, the 8s that we actually call 8s are 1, 3, 5, and 7. If you'll notice the pattern there, they are all odd numbers, or you can skip 2. 1, 3, 5, and 7. So those are all your odd numbers. Your 16ths do the same thing, except for you just have more of them. So our first one right here, the first one of anything, is going to be 1/16. Our second one is going to be 3/16. Our next one, if you know this pattern, 1, 3, then 5, 5/16. Your next one is going to be 7, and if you notice, we're just skipping 2, we're doing all odd numbers. 7/16, 9/16, 11/16. We skip, right? 11, skip 12, get to 13, and the last one is 15/16. Now, I didn't do this one on this one, but we can go back and label them if we need to. We went from 1 to 3. What happened to 2? It's the same thing as we did on the other ones. 1, 2. 1/8 is the same thing as 2/16. And if you'll notice, a 16th, if I double that, go 1, 2, I end up at 2/16. You can do that all the way across the board. Same deal. We went from 3/16 to 5/16. We skipped 4. 4/4 is the same thing as 4/16. The reason I like for students to know this is it helps you whenever you're converting measurements. If you don't know your tape measure all that well, it will help you. This will eventually help you read your tape measure. 1/2 is the same thing as 8/16. We got 9. Between 9 and 11 should be 10. 3/4 is the same thing as 12/16. And 7/8 is the same thing as 14/16. So there you have all of your measurements, all of your conversions, right? And that should help you at least somewhat understand how to read a tape measure. What I'm going to do next is we're going to go over converting measurements. We're going to go over adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing measurements. I don't know if we'll get to all that, but if I don't get to it in this video, I'll probably make another one. I'm going to turn the light on so you guys can see a little bit better. All right. I'm going to erase. All right, one of the things that, and we just did this a little bit, I actually showed this to you, but one of the things sometimes that you've got to do is convert some of your measurements over. In order to convert, this is a fairly simple process, actually a very easy process. If I have a quarter, we'll start with some easy ones, we'll go to a little harder. If I have a quarter, and I want to convert that into 8s, if I'm converting something into 8s, I know without a doubt that the bottom number has to be 8. What? 4 times what gives me 8? Should be 2. So 4 times 2 gives me 8. We do the same thing for the top. We do times 2, times 2, we end up with 2 8s. That's all measuring conversions are. So if I asked you how many 16ths is 3/4, right? Then your bottom number here has to be 16. 4 times what gives me 16? Should be 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 3 times 4 is 12. And you'll get better and better and better at this. The more that you do these, you'll have some assignments on this. If I asked you how many 8s is, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good one for you. We'll just do a half for now. Half is easy. How many 8s is a half? Bottom number's got to be 8. 2 times 1 gives me 8. 4 times 4, 4 8s. All right. You can also do this in the reverse as well. If I asked you to reduce conversions, are nothing more than going the inverse of conversions this way are nothing more than the inverse of reducing something down. So if I asked you what 14/16 is, reduced to its lowest form, what number goes into both of these numbers? If you say 2, 2 goes into 14, 7 times, 2 goes into 16, 8 times. So that's just the backwards reducing down. You could also ask, let's say we got 5 8s. We could also go to how many 16ths is that? Well, it's going to be a multiple of 8 times 1 gives me 16. It should be times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Right? You're also going to have some assignments on what to do, how do you divide measurements in half. This is really actually fairly simple, especially fractions. All right, so if we got fractions, let's see where we're at here. All right. If I want to divide a fraction in half, all you have to do is double the bottom number. So if I ask you what is half of, let's say just say 1/4. All you do is double the bottom number, all right, your denominator, leave the top number alone. So if I take half of a 1/4, I double 4, I get 8, leave the top number alone, 1/8. Half of 1/4 is an 8. If you look at your tape measure, you'll find that obviously to be true. If you want to do half of, let's say, 5 8s, double your bottom number, which is 16. Leave the top number alone, you get 5 16ths. So to take half of any fraction, all you got to do is double your bottom number, leave the top number alone. We can also do half of, let's say, 3/4. Double your bottom number, 4 times 2 is 8, leave the top number alone, you get 3 8s. Now we get a little more complicated. These are whenever we start using fractions and taking half of a whole number and a fraction. Let's say in the shop, I need to take half, cut a board in half, and your boards are rarely, if ever, going to come exactly a whole number length. So we'll start with an easy one. We'll say, what is half of 24? I think most of you in high school should know that half of 24 is 12. All right, it gets slightly more complicated when we go to what's half of 24 and let's say 3 8s. All I do is break these two numbers apart and then add them back together. So if I take half of 24, I get 12. Add those back together. Half of 3 8s, half of 3 8s, you double the bottom number, you get 16. Leave the top number alone. 12 plus 3 16ths is 12 and 3 16ths. All right. Now we're going to give you a slightly more complicated. What is half of 11 and a half? Now we're going to split these two numbers apart again. We're going to split off the 11 and a half. Half of 11 is 5 and a half. All right. Half of a half is, you double your bottom number. We're going to add these two back together. You double your bottom number, you get 4. Leave that alone. Now 5 1/4 plus, 5 1/2 plus 1/4 is 5 3/4. Now, in order to add two fractions together, I just know in my head, obviously, that a half plus 1/4 is 3/4. But if you want to add the two fractions, you've got to find a common denominator. So if you wanted to take that and find your common denominator, all right, this is going to end up at 5 2/4 plus 1/4, and you end up with 5 3/4 that way. 2 plus 1 is 3. Your 4 stay the same. You end up with 5 3/4. All right. And I will probably do another video on purely adding and subtracting fractions and multiplying and dividing fractions. That gets into a little more work than what we're going to work on right now.